Hello and welcome back to Logical Magic Examining Esoterica. Hey guys, today I have a dual purpose episode for you with Lindsay Stanton. Today we're going to be talking about the healing magic of Reiki, and then we're also going to be talking about past life connections, spirit mediumship, and healing grief, because Lindsay took a journey brought to her unfortunately by a loss in learning how to cope with grief through connection that transcends this earthly plane. So Lindsay, hello, how are you today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to our conversation. Lots of juicy topics in there.
Yes, there is. And we're always trying to help people find their way towards the best healing modalities for them. And knowing that it's possible that five different answers will comprise somebody's healing toolkit. And that it's important to be open to new ways of doing things because for instance, you may have answers for somebody, I may have answers for somebody, and we may have an answer for somebody that they both need, meaning that it is important to diversify when you're looking for the thing that will make the difference in your own healing journey. So, Lindsay, can you tell me a little bit about your background in Reiki? First of all, I always like to approach things like people don't know what we're talking about yet. So, what is Reiki?
It's really energy healing. At the end of the day, all things are energy. We're all controlled by energy. We all feel energy. We all absorb energy, and we all transmute energy to some capacity. So, at the end of the day, and it's so critical to the grief healing journey because we are all energy. Reiki just kind of came into my life as a lot of things after my husband and soulmate crossed over. They were kind of handed to me on a platter, if you will. I was introduced to Reiki through a spiritual community that I'm in, and a medium that runs it who has her own Reiki training. And it's really in combination with mediumship and combination with the angelic realm, which is a very interesting twist on Reiki. But it makes total sense, right? Because when you're doing energy healing work, you're opening yourself up to not only transmute the energy, but also potentially receive messages, which I definitely do when I'm doing Reiki sessions with people. But it was definitely guided to me, as many of the modalities that I tested and that resonated with me. But as you mentioned, I feel like along the journey, things are going to come across your path, especially once you kind of deep dive. And I feel like if you're on a grief path, you probably are testing any and all things to try to reduce your pain level to at least something that's tolerable, that allows you to put one foot in front of the other. And just kind of inherent in that. There are a lot of things that are going to come to you that you're like, okay, does this feel right for me or does this not feel right for me? And there's so many things that you can deep dive into, but really listening to your body and what resonates with you. And the Reiki, I feel like, is just a really beautiful way to do that because when I'm doing sessions with people, and as I mentioned, they do layer in, intuitive messages from the other side often, and that can be loved ones as well as angels. But it also just helps relieve some of the pressure that they might be feeling because we do store so much of the energy around loss, trauma, all things in our body, not just in our chakras, but in our physical body. And I feel like because of that, it was definitely, I was guided to the modality for a reason. And it's a great way to help release some of that pressure for people.
So Reiki is the channeling of healing energy through focus and targeting, and it also relies heavily on intent. And when we're doing that, we open up into other dimensions and into other realms. I work in the angelic realm a great deal because I'm a conduit for the Archangel Gabriel. And when we talk about angels, we're talking about the purest form of an energy that a particular element can achieve. And so tapping into that with Reiki, we have to remember that grief is this uniquely dysphoric energy because it contains so many other elements than sadness. We think of grief as being about mourning and purging and crying and missing somebody and longing for them, but sometimes there's anger about abandonment in there, even if it doesn't make logical sense. The first thing to do when you're approaching grief is to remember, don't hold it to a logical standard, start from an emotional place with it, and be forgiving of yourself if it does contain elements of another emotion. One of the things that I did with Jacob in the Living with Your Own Dichotomy episode is talking about the fact that more than one thing can be true at once. And nothing typifies that more than the feeling, the emotion, the process of grief, because it is a process. And there are 5 stages that are typically named in psychology, and they do have bearing in Reiki healing and in grief processing. So what do you do is when you're doing Reiki, is it primarily with people who have suffered a loss, or is it, you do Reiki for whatever somebody might be trying to achieve, and then messages come through from the other side? When you're in your practice, what goes on with that?
Yeah, great question. And I agree with so much of what you were just mentioning in regards to Reiki and the movement of energy. So I do Reiki regardless, both with people that are and have experienced grief, but also just with people who are looking for, some really great energy healing. And either way, messages definitely come through for them. Sometimes I encounter people that don't really have many people on the other side to their knowledge. And that's a whole nother conversation, right? But in then those cases, they might have a lot of messages, more from the angelic realm coming through. But I have definitely frequently, when if I'm in a coaching container with a client who specifically come to me for grief, obviously that's a specific use case. But when I'm working with somebody who has not come to me specifically because of grief, it is amazing sometimes the things that come out during those sessions about loved ones on the other side. And, whether it's like they have a tattoo honoring that person or they're wearing something honoring that person, so many times like those messages come through. And I can feel in my own physical body when I'm receiving those messages in a lot of different ways and a lot of specific ways, depending on who or how they're coming through and what they have for the person that I'm assisting. But yeah, so it's really both depending on the client that I'm working with.
One thing that you touched upon is something that I'd like to draw a little bit more of attention to, because I work with so many trauma survivors, people recovering from childhood trauma that carried forward into emotional regulation issues and sometimes different forms of disorders resulting from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And they don't have the best relationship to the idea of ancestors and people on the other side because of that, because their experience with relatives or family can have been very, very difficult. And one of the things to remember is it does give you better access to an angelic realm, because it's almost like your waiting room has fewer people in it because you have fewer connections from the earthly realm. But that it also does have that when you are not particularly connected to your tribe, to your community of the flesh, of your body, in the family realm, you are more likely to have better access to angelic guides because of that, because you will have been connected to them in a way that is not disrupted by the earthly plane. And when we're kind of talking about the best use of Reiki, it's very, very personalized from what I understand, that people can be, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're not able to achieve your goals, if you have a recurring autoimmune disorder, it can all be indicative of congested energy. And that is one of the things that a Reiki master can help you with. And then you also teach Reiki, do you not?
No, I just
Oh, I beg
practiced.
your pardon. I beg your pardon.
But it is, and I think this is interesting because I'm bringing this up now because it layers in so well with so many things that you've just mentioned. I also got certified in somatics, and I think the somatics layered with Reiki, there is so much crossover, and I just think, and also I would mention that I think there's so much crossover with a lot of the felt senses and things that people deal with trauma and grief. There's so much commonality between those two areas. And that was kind of a lot of the areas I was drawn to just naturally, spiritually to explore, including the somatics, because that it felt right to me. It made sense to me that this could be a path to my healing journey, because I was holding it in my body. And so whether you're talking about holding it in the physical sense in your body, or, at the spiritual level in your like soul and the way you feel those emotions, regardless, it helps you transmute and move that energy into a positive way, which goes to your duality comment earlier. And the fact that, I think oftentimes people can struggle with grief because you can 1000% be holding joy and the deepness of grief at the same time. So I think, those two things can coexist. And when you can recognize that and continue to move through it, the joy aspect can kind of come in and help you transmute some of that darker, energy that you might have with the grief too.
Okay, and when we're talking about energy transmutation, remember energy can, and this is just for people listening, energy can never be eradicated, but it can be transformed into a different version of energy. So that's what transmutation is about. And we are going to talk about somatics as well, which is something I'm not well versed in. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what it's about and how you became trained in it. And just like one more thing about Reiki to kind of underline for people, because if you're searching for your answers and simply how to experience more wellness in your life, whether it is emotional or physical, in particular, trauma survivors, energy has to go somewhere. And if you have unprocessed emotions, if you have unprocessed grief in particular, grief is a butt kicker, then it will come through you in physical symptoms as well. And things like Reiki and energy healing are one of the things that can help people release that. And it's not that it will act as a cure, but it may act to dissipate and to resolve some symptoms. And it may, in fact, resolve them entirely over the course of time. If you have something that is recurring in your life and it has no explanation, it is a really good idea to go to someone who is a metaphysical healer to see if they can help you uncover any underlying spiritual issues about where you're retaining energy and how you're processing it in a way that you could retool your process to better serve you, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So somatics, please tell me about somatics. I don't know much about them, so this is a little bit fun for me.
Yeah, I absolutely will. But can I mention too what you just said? Like, I feel like in a lot of ways it's shining a spotlight on what you already know. And like at some level in your body, in your soul, like those tools give you an opportunity to shine a spotlight on what you already know so that you can start to heal it, which is just enormous, benefit. But
And trauma survivors, they find very frequently that things like fibromyalgia and other autoimmune disorders can be present. And it is possible, although not proven, this is not talking about, this is a theoretical area versus something that has been studied in science. It is possible that when you process the emotions that have been coming through your physical body from your emotional body, that you will be able to resolve and restore order into your autoimmune system. So it's worth it. If you haven't found your answers, keep going, keep trying. It's likely in another realm, and you need something that is standing outside of the westernized medicine, which I'm a fan of Western medicine. Please don't mistake me. We're very, very lucky to have as many treatments as we do. But if those treatments are not finding the answers for you, then please look outside of that realm and go towards people like Reiki masters and people who can try and connect you to the energies that you may have been repressing, that because you do not know how to understand them, they overwhelm you. And people who work in this field can help you deal with and unload and process energies and emotions in a strategized way that will help your healing journey, will guide you forward into being able to do it almost effortlessly. But at first it can be very, very overwhelming. That's where the thing comes in, where keep looking to see how many things you need to add into your personal treatment plan in order to achieve your best state of wellness, which is what this is all about. So somatics, very excited about this.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's a really good transition since you mentioned autoimmune, and so much of that roots itself in inflammation, which can be, as you mentioned, in combination with Western medicine, but can really be held in the body, stored in the body, which is really what somatics is all about. And it's interesting. I didn't know anything about somatics. I hadn't even heard of it a few years ago before, definitely never heard of it before my husband passed away, but 100% fits with everything that I have been learning and guided to outside of that type of like more traditional therapeutic healing. I was not, and for everybody, the journey is unique, which I think you alluded to earlier. As far as, what modalities speak best to you, I definitely have some general guidelines that I give to people that I feel like are good starting points to at least, you have to have some steps forward to like know which things to explore. But for me, somatics just felt right to me. And it really is about feeling into what your body's telling you and exploring it. And it is traditionally used more in trauma. But as I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of the things related to trauma, self-help, like those types of tools, whether it was listening to audibles related to that, really resonated with me and spoke more to me than traditional talk therapy. So the somatic work was definitely something I was drawn to because it's listening to your body, it's feeling into your body, it's asking your body questions, and then exploring how you can help heal and resolve that. And we do store so much in our bodies when we're going through grief. I'll give an example. So myself actually and my stepson both dealt with this after Roger's passing, where we both had so much tension in our jaw, like just so much tension and pain in my jaw for well over a year, probably close to 2 years. And it just wouldn't release. And that was where my body was choosing to hold and store those emotions. And once you like really start to do the work and dive deep in, it allows you the opportunity to explore why you're holding it there. And to me, it does beautifully layer with Reiki, because once you've identified the where and the why within your body, then you can start to look at it, layer in also the chakra piece to it. And okay, if you're storing something in here, for example, like how does that relate to you releasing your emotions, releasing what you have to say in regards to your struggle, releasing your feeling of overwhelm or whatever it might be. It always relates to the part of your body where you're having a real struggle or felt sense of something being stuck. And so the two things in combination with each other can allow for a lot of that physical and emotional release, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Now, my exposure to somatics is very cursory. I'm not well versed in this at all. But what I've been seeing of it, it's one of the healing modalities that has really come to the fore. I want to say in the last 24 months or so is when I really started seeing a lot about it. And it was very specifically targeting the idea of the emotions that are stored in different body parts and somatic exercise to be able, in particular, to help people process grief and repressed emotions, which apparently center in the hips a great deal in the stretches and some of the exercise that I was seeing. But I know that's not definitive of the entire experience. It's just what kept coming across my feed. So what is somatics?
Yeah, it really is the storing of trauma response in your body, and being able to look at that, feel into that in a deeper way, instead of just talk about it, like sit with it and explore it. And there's like a beauty and comfort in the exploration process that just doesn't exist with traditional talk therapy. And nothing against traditional talk therapy. If it resonates, just like anything else, if it resonates with you, 100% go for it. I know within the communities I'm in some phenomenal communities that are specifically helping people that are in grief, whether it's the loss of a child or a spouse. And I know for a lot of the people that I'm in community with, that talk therapy just did not resonate with them. And in some cases, people explore it and, it hurt more than it helped. So I think, just knowing like what's going to resonate best with you. But for the communities that I've seen, like the lens that somatics comes at things that is more in relationship to like trauma and holding things in your body that you often and most often do not even recognize that you're holding. It gives you an opportunity to explore those in a safe space. And I love the beauty of the containers that somatic therapy can provide for people to find out what's behind it. Because oftentimes there's things hidden behind it that you didn't realize. Like, you had mentioned anger at the beginning. That wasn't something that happened to me. That wasn't ever an experience of mine in relation to my grief journey. I recognize that that's often not the case for others, but you might have it like deep inside you and you don't think you have it. You don't think you're experiencing it, but your body is storing and telling you a different story behind it. So you have to, dig a little deeper and figure out, okay, I'm feeling when you're talking to me about this, or we're bringing up this specific memory related to your loved one, it's triggering, like a rapid heartbeat, or, feeling a tightness in your chest, or, whatever the thing might be, like tightness in your hips, as you mentioned. It could be a variety of different places that you're storing and feeling it in your body, but digging into that and finding out why. And once you release it, it's extremely emotional. I mean, you might find yourself, I've witnessed other people giving sessions, and it is a beautiful, powerful thing, even when, it's somebody like just completely letting loose with tears, but the afterwards, the feeling of relief from that release is just, it's magic, honestly. And
That's transformative.
yeah, 100%.
I think one of the things, I'm going to circle back because I am a fan of therapy for people very specifically who are dealing with CPTSD or PTSD. And the role of it is because, please remember, not one area may have all your answers. If you're dealing with the word complex, it may be a very layered experience in trying to heal something. And the role of talk therapy for people who are deep trauma survivors is connecting to their ability to express their feelings as they're having them, which is something that trauma survivors, particularly if they were badly abused, and complex post-traumatic stress survivors were abused usually over a 10-year period. It's also, you see it in the war of entrance. It's a long-term experience that you couldn't escape from. And so they lose their ability to voice their feelings. And so in some communities, it can be incredibly beneficial simply to connect yourself to your ability to communicate to yourself and others what you really are feeling. But as you said, in some people, it made it worse because it stops there. It doesn't have it has some cognitive behavioral therapy and recognizing emotions, but it doesn't have the resolution of an energy within it. It just connects you to an ability to understand. But understanding is only half the battle, and sometimes even less than half when we're dealing with healing our very complicated systems. So it can play a role, but I think there is also a role for everything that you're talking about in a better understanding of our energetic and our emotional bodies, which you're always going to find in metaphysical and spiritual communities over therapeutic communities, because the traditional westernized talk therapy, because they have to work with everything being proven. And when we're talking about something that's so individual and so personal as your feelings, your anger, your grief, your sorrow, your pain, it is individual. And the therapies that you're talking about connect you to your individual knowledge versus the academic knowledge of something like talk therapy. So it can do tremendous things, and there are people who are very well trained, and I never want to discourage people from going towards help. But if you are trying to get help and that area has been letting you down, know that there is an entire universe that Lindsay is talking about, then can start connecting other dots for you to kind of rewire your system so that you work in conjunction with and in cooperation with the rest of you. And that really is one of the things that we're talking about with energetic healing and something like somatics. You had referred to the tightness of your jaw, the tension that comes along with trying to hold things together can cause all kinds of body signals, which is what we're really kind of talking about. Did somatics help you resolve that and help you understand it for your stepson as well?
It did, yes, 100%, 100%. And then the other thing that I think helped a lot too is just literal physical movement. That made a huge, that was actually the first thing I felt called to do, like literally hours, after just kind of, you're a zombie at first, but and for a while after, honestly. But the first thing I felt really called to do was physical movement, and the act, I am so certain that the act of putting one foot in front of the other affected my mental state of continuing to try to figure out a way to move forward as well. And doing it in nature helped open me up to receive more and more messages and getting that layered in. So it definitely helped open the door and solve, a lot of the immediate things that were going on for me and, kind of the struggles. But so that was, I think, probably the simplest, most powerful thing early in days. So anybody listening who's kind of in that very early phases of their journey, physical movement can make a huge one. I'm not talking about, you don't have to go out for a run. It can literally just be a walk out in nature. And it's such a game changer.
Yeah, anybody who's been listening for a while is probably laughing because I'm always telling people get out there or get into nature, connect with trees. I'm insanely active as well, and it reconnects you to the idea of what is energy transmutation, is taking one thing from one state and moving it to another and a more positive one. And that is actually what happens to us when we begin to exercise. Our brain releases chemicals and hormones that literally help us heal from our dysphoria, from our despair, or from inflammation as well. You talked a little bit about the role of inflammation, and that's another thing that energy management, such as through like stretching, yoga, exercise, answers may differ from person to person, but there's an answer for you. And again, always go towards the people who are willing to try and connect you to something that is tailor-made to what your needs are versus a template that is superimposed on a situation or upon a process, which is a little bit like what we were talking about with talk therapy, is people are trained to do this and to do that, and they don't give a lot back because they are really having like people make their own discoveries. When people are in tremendous amounts of pain, when they are completely confused by what's going on within them, they need more guidance and they need more flexibility in what will function best for them. And that's where the healing modalities of energy management, of Reiki, of somatics, of spirit guide mediumship as well, because that can play a role as well. And that's kind of a perfect segue into, Lindsay, I'm so sorry that you lost somebody and it was such a profound loss. As with so many changes, apparently it connected you. And guys, be aware of this. Some of the worst experiences of your life will actually connect you to your best gifts, because trauma almost rewires your brain. And so you are able to make better discoveries about what more is there. And it's not a silver lining necessarily, but it is something that to keep in mind, that there are gifts to be had through this journey of self-exploration. We are all connected. And as you discover more about self, you may discover more about who you are in relationship to the greater whole and what role you can play. And from what I understand, that is what happened to you, is you had a devastating loss that then opened up an angelic realm to you, a spiritual realm to you, that you were able to connect at a level that you had not been able to before. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I would say that it helps answer the why. I think anybody that's in, dealing with trauma, dealing with deep grief, there's this huge question of why that just sits behind everything, right? And I know on my journey that it took the biggest loss, this, loss of the physical, for me to get where I am today. Because if I'm fully honest, this was the only loss that would take me there.
Mhm.
I definitely had, signs, guidance, and information from the other side, relatives, angelic realm, getting angel numbers and things like that my whole life. And I think we all do. It's just whether or not we're tapped into it and recognize it. But this was like, I mean, take that, put it on steroids, opening Pandora's box. I mean, it was like, just and it was immediate. So we were blessed enough to recognize, have downloads, and have the conversation before he crossed around staying in connection with each other. And we both knew that this was not a permanent thing, that it was temporary. And we had those conversations before he crossed. Now, for anybody who's lost somebody who hasn't had the opportunity to have those conversations, I would say you 100% can build the communication system that I've built, my husband and I have built, regardless. But I will say that I firmly feel that helped open the path for us easier, faster, because we'd had those conversations. I literally got my first sign from him minutes after he crossed. And then it just continued to build upon that. But I would also say that listen and be open to the things that get delivered to you, because I had so many, I'd never even listened to podcasts before Roger Cross. I didn't. And I had like podcasts popping up on my phone. The other side loves to use technology. So if you're getting things on your phone, on your radio in your car, be open to it. And if you hear an ad for a podcast or a book comes in your email or and you're like, oh, that looks interesting, listen to that tap, listen to that nudge, because it is from the other side and they could take you down a whole nother healing journey path that you might not even recognize. But it's those little nudges that quite honestly make all the difference. Because I mean, I look back now, it's been 3 years, and I look back now at where I am today and the tools in my tool belt, the learnings and the journeys that I've been on. And if you had told me, before he got sick, that this was going to be, coming down the pipe for me, I would have laughed in your face, but now I look back and it's like all those little tiny nuggets along the way are what led me to where I am today. And when we can tap into that and we can trust it, it's just a huge game changer.
You're touching on something that is so important that, like, let's stop and unpack it for just a second. The idea that, we talked about how energy cannot be eradicated, but it can be transformed or transmuted. That is the same thing with death. We think of death as being a final thing, but it's not. It is taking the energy of who you are, your soul, your divine being, and it is transmuted into a different state of being. And that is true for everybody, although different people have different journeys and like different things come into play here. Again, it's hard to have a definitive statement for something that is completely in another realm. It encompasses more than we understand. But the first thing to understand is, like, I think it was C.S. Lewis who said, you do not have a soul. You are a soul, you have a body. And that is exactly what it is. You are, when you're alive in the 3D, you are inhabiting basically a construct that allows your consciousness to interact with this particular reality. But when that construct no longer functions or is taken away through death or disease or accident or whatever it may be, the energy of your consciousness goes on. So whenever I'm reading for somebody, and I do most of my readings via Zoom these days because it makes for very, very clear reading. It always amazes people that I can pick up a deck of cards, and what I'm really doing to is proving that there is more to this world than we can see, which is the first tenet of faith. And that is actually the idea behind spirit communication and our ability to continue beyond this physical form. And the things that you and Roger discovered, I take it you had some advanced warning that he would no longer be inhabiting this realm. And you were able to put together like almost a, hey, look for this, look for that, I'll send you signs type of thing. Is that what happened?
We didn't have that specific of a conversation. It was more of a general conversation before he went into hospice. And it was really interesting because we both, the same day at the same time, had a download of information that this was not the end, that this was merely a bump on the road, if you will, and that we had the opportunity we would have the opportunity to always be in contact with each other. And so as soon as we both saw each other after having that, receiving that information, we had a conversation about it, and then we proceeded to talk about it multiple times along his journey as he physically transitioned out of this world. But we didn't talk about specific signs, but I mean, we knew each other like we knew ourselves. So that was easy. We thankfully had over 20 years together in the physical realm and got to do all things together because we worked together, traveled together. And so, he used to always say to me that I knew him better than anyone. And after he crossed, I fully appreciated what he meant by that, which definitely transitions into your conversation about past lives, because I had this deep physical feeling and just knowingness that the reason this felt so heavy to me, and I'm not saying that it doesn't feel heavy regardless, but that the reason this felt like such an insane heaviness to me, and so like a piano on my back, was that I was feeling all the past lives where we had been separated physically from each other, and all those previous losses. And that was validated for me during past life regressions.
Do you do past life regressions for clients?
I don't, but I found a phenomenal past life regression specialist in the Chicago area that I went to multiple times. And it was really interesting because it validated what I think I kind of knew or remembered at a soul level, that we had been together like pretty much every lifetime. Every lifetime I went back to, we were together. So, and it was really interesting because where we were, what we were doing, the places we lived, all tied back to places that we like to visit and things that we'd like to do in this physical incarnation, this rodeo, if you will. So it was very, very validating and super emotional. You're in kind of a hypnotic state, for those who haven't done it or don't know, which I had also never done before. But I was just streaming tears the entire time. And it wasn't necessarily sad tears. It was just all that felt emotion from every lifetime just coming to the surface in this physical body. And it is a super powerful experience. And like I mentioned, for me personally, validated so much that I think I remembered at a soul level.
So in some ways, like there was greater depth to your connection that was discovered after he again was no longer part of the physical realm. There's something I want to cover, and it might be a little foreign to you, but I need to cover it for other people I know who are listening. I have a bunch of people who the worst thought in the entire world is that they will meet up with people that have died, that have gone before them, because they were abusive to them or they were very, very damaging. And I need y'all to understand something. That is not the way the spirit realm works. You will never have somebody's presence inflicted upon you if it is against your will. That when we're talking about, if you go to somebody like Lindsay or somebody who connects you with other spirits, you do not need to worry about a connection intruding in that way. The only type of spirit mediumship I do are for spirits who are trying to resolve some karma to release some earthly burdens. But there are people who do the greater spectrum. And if there is a connection that you do not wish to have part of you, then it's not part of you. It doesn't, like, you don't need to fear this realm because you've lost people that maybe, like, this is how complex grief can be. Maybe you're a little relieved that they're gone, and that you don't need to fear it at all. And that, again, there is something valuable for everyone, even if, like me, I'm somebody who does not have family connection, and even the relatives I had, I didn't know many of them. Like there was a lot of death when I was young, and then people I never met. That there's still something there for you, because ancestral wisdom is one of the things that can help you resolve your ancestral trauma, or what are also called generational curses. And so that there is a role in healing, no matter what your earthly connections were like. There is a role in which the spirit world can help you on your journey if it's something that you're open to, but you don't need to be afraid of it. And that's because I run into that with my clients who are like, oh, please God, don't ever make me see my father again. It's like, it's not going to work like that. It's not going to work like that. It's not a threatening realm. Now, there are provisos with reaching into any ungrounded realities, which is you have to be safe, you have to be with somebody that you trust. But everybody I know who does this professionally has a good process around protecting the space around it. What do you do to protect your space to help keep yourself and your clients safe?
Great question. Definitely a great angle on the topic. For me personally, I always meditate and invite in. First of all, I'm only all about positive energy and inviting in positive energies and those who are for the best and highest good of my client and for my client's experience. So I meditate ahead of time and invite in those who will help with that and those who have positive messages to bring forward. I have never had any negative energetic experience, and I pray every night, and I talk to my husband every night before I go to bed, which helps me get dream visits. And part of that prayer for me is inviting in my guides, my angels, my loved ones on the other side, and all those who walk in the love and light to help protect me and guide me to my soul's highest purpose. And I think when you set those kind of, standards in place, you're only going to get positive messaging coming through. And I think it's important to note too that we have so much fear here in the physical world and our meat suits, as Gary Zukav calls it. But, on the other side, it is all love, and everything is through the lens of love and what you perceive as love. So your experience, like when you cross over or when you tap into the spiritual realm and open yourself up, when you set those standards, is only going to be from the place of love. So a lot of the fear-based things, and the negative things that you might have experienced here in the physical world, they don't exist over there. It's just different. So I know it can be super easy to get caught up in fear here in the physical world, but I think it's freeing when we recognize that the spirit realm is about love and helping us and guiding us.
And another thing to keep in mind is that the negative associations that we might have with a person, those are ego-driven impulses and energies. But what survives beyond this realm is not egocentric. It is about greater connection. It is about the energy of love and connecting all. And so it is, again, I've heard it from multiple people that they're afraid of going towards spirit mediumship to try and receive any messages, because there are people that they're like, no, please, I'm afraid to die because I don't want that person around me again. That is part of their shadow side that they were dealing with in their lifetime. And it is the energy that we essentially ascend past and transcend. And so what remains of a person will be their divine self. And that divine self will always be trying to aid you and help you and guide you and express love. And are there trickster energies and other elements and, dark entities? Of course there are. But people who are trained and people who know how to set up boundaries, energetic boundaries, which is part of the reason that it's good to go through a trained professional as you develop your own skills. Lindsay, where can people find you? And can you tell me really specifically, like what you might be able to do for somebody as they're trying to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the easiest way is either my website, thesoulrevival.com, or I'm very active on Instagram at the Healing Grief Guide is my handle on Instagram. I do a lot of lives on there. I feature different guests and things, talk about different modalities. But what somebody can expect it to work with me would be, we can do a one-on-one healing session. I do some group sessions, both Reiki and that layers in somatics. But I also, probably the thing that people come to me the most for is coaching. So when I'm coaching a client, whether it's working through typically with like grief, but it could be just they're struggling with overwhelm and a lot of the feelings associated with grief. But I layer in with the clients during the one-on-ones a lot of the modalities that we've talked about today. So incorporating, the Reiki and the somatic sessions and exploring modalities that will help them, talking through things that have helped me along my journey, letting them explore them, and then, very much growing in their ability to have tools in their toolbox. And that's what it's all about. It's really about giving them the tools and experiences and tapping into their experiences through conversation about my experiences that have helped them to be able to foster a lot of that conversation and communication with their loved ones on their own, and therefore, really help them on their healing journey.
Um, all of Lindsay's social tags and her website, they'll be contained in either the episode description on the YouTube channel, where that's where I put up all the video of these interviews, or it will be in the episode notes on the audio version as well. So there will be direct links for Lindsay's work and for how to reach her and connect with her. And one last thing to think about when you're dealing with grief is that there's no time frame on when you're allowed to deal with it. You could have lost your mother or your father or a beloved aunt when you were 10 years old, and you could be 50 years old and still have some grief that you're trying to process around it, because it altered the way that you approach connection, or it altered the way that you're able to extend yourself towards somebody, because it introduced the idea of like the pain that can sometimes go along with connection. So don't judge yourself on time frames never tell yourself I should be over this by now. If you're not over it, it means there's still something to heal. And there are people who work specifically in these healing modalities, in these healing methods, that can help you go forward on your journey. And it's perfectly all right if you have been carrying around stale emotions or unprocessed grief or unprocessed pain for decades or years, or it doesn't matter if it is a recent loss. Loss defines our ability to connect until we understand the role of loss in our ability to connect. And so people like Lindsay Stanton can help you on your process to release grief, which is very, very profound. And one last thing on that is, don't pay any attention to societal standards around when you're supposed to be over something. The Victorians, it's the one area where the Victorians were more progressive than we were. They understood that grief was a long process. We tell people, it's like, my God, it's been 6 weeks. Aren't you over that? It takes a long time. And no loss is, you get to determine the significance of a loss. Your society does not. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I would just like to add to that you don't need to get over it. You don't even need to think about it in those terms. Like, using that vernacular, I feel like culturally we create this perception that you have to somehow move past it, which is not the case. It's, your forever is different now. It's
So you coexist with it. You coexist.
Yeah, exactly. Your future is different than what you thought it was going to be. So that's always going to be the case. And so working with that, I think, is just really, really important, because it can help eliminate a lot of the overwhelm that people feel and aloneness.
And judgment of self is another thing that we have to learn how to cope with and to disregard, because it is one of the things that holds us back. And it is another thing that trained healers are able to help you with processing and approaching in a beneficial way rather than in a way that, criticizes you. Because unfortunately, we have all these exterior sources that criticize us for our feelings. And then we internalize that, and we often do that to ourselves. And again, people in the different healing methods can help you find a way past those limiting energies into a greater understanding of self and others. Everyone, that was Lindsay Stanton. She can help you tremendously with connecting to the other side and processing your grief. Somatics is something else that she does. Reiki is yet another thing that she does. And I, of course, am Alane. You can find me here at Logical Magic, examining esoterica every week. If you want to book me for a tarot card reading or a life coaching session, you can do so exclusively at therisingmoon.com, or you can always find me on YouTube at Cronecast at the Rising Moon, where the video versions of these particular interviews will always be put up as well. Again, remember, be as kind and loving, as compassionate to yourself as you possibly can whenever you're approaching healing. Be patient with yourself, be patient with your journey, and know that the knowledge and the healing and the methods will come to you through a series of signs and connections, and that your pace doesn't need to look like anybody else's pace. It is your pace. Your love is individual, your grieving process may be individual as well, and loss is simply momentary and temporary absence, and processing grief and connecting with the other side is one of the things that can help teach you about that. Take care, be well, and live magically.